Hey guys, welcome to Irish Medieval History. Today we had our first live stream on Facebook. Originally it was meant to be on YouTube, but due to technical problems we had to move over to Facebook. We thought this would be a failure, and yet it turned into a massive success, and we'd like to thank everybody who was involved. Anyway, we decided to re-record it onto YouTube so anybody can literally go on and listen to the Viking Age in Ireland, as we did cover some really interesting topics that we actually never thought of covering before. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy and all the best. Welcome to Irish Medieval History. Today we are live on Facebook. We were originally attending to be live on YouTube, but because of the continuous technical problems that is YouTube, we've moved over to Facebook, which is a little bit more dry and cut. You click on live and you expect to be live. Simple. And so here we're on Facebook today with Denton and Michael, and we're going to have a wee chat on the Vikings. So any questions you guys have, make sure to post it up on the old chat there. It's going a bit slow. I think it's like a minute slow all the way to 10 minutes slow. So if you find your question is 10 minutes late, Facebook is to blame for that.
No, it's only about 10 seconds delay, and I can see all the comments. So don't worry. Like, you'll see it's about a 10-15 second delay between sort of when we get it and we'll pass it across to you. So plenty of people coming on now here, and just put a like, put a share, ask a question, say hello. We'll all just try and get the interactions, because I'll be here typing away and keeping an eye on it. So it's great to have you on board, all of you so far, and
yes.
And it's great to have Denton on as well on this makeshift. I feel like we promised a big marquee, and you have come and found one of those rundown tents from a download festival or something.
That's pretty much how we're going.
But we'll make it work. We'll make it work. Improvise, adapt, and overcome. That's for one of the boys who's watching.
Right.
So let's get back into it.
So we're going to start again, sort of thing, are we? We don't know how much of that went out.
Yeah, how did the Viking Age start, and what is a Viking is what we were basically starting the conversation with.
Yes.
That's an easy topic to get into.
That is a very easy topic, because, as I said, so often the Vikings weren't Vikings, because people have this idea. When you see so many comments, the Vikings, it's like they were one group of people from one place. They were all together. They had one leader, and I mean, to begin with, of course, they weren't all one group of people. They were from Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Frisia. They had no unified leaders. They fought among each other just as much as they did fight with the Irish or the Saxons. And even the terminology, because I mean, Viking or Viking, as it is in Old Norse, literally means an adventurer, a seafarer, you could say a pirate, someone who goes somewhere, but it is linked to a ship, because you could basically say it's a seafarer. So, if you turned up at Lindisfarne in 793, or you arrived off the coast of Ireland in 795 in a ship, and you jump off and you, burn a monastery or two, get back in your ship, and off you go, you're a Viking. But if you have come and you've founded a settlement like, Waterford or Wexford or Difflin, you are now no longer a Viking, because you're not in a ship. You're raising crops, having children, blah, blah, blah. So your Vikingness is in the ship. And I think that's quite an interesting point, because, you are only a Viking if what you're doing is related to the ship, or even what you're going to do, like maybe getting some slaves, you're going to take them to the ship and go somewhere. Well, you're Viking. But if say you have settled here, or you've been born, for example, in Difflin, you're raised here, you may never have been in a ship, well, you're not a Viking, you're a Norse settler, you're a townsperson. And even if you are fighting with local Irish tribes, you're still not a Viking. I mean, you've got your shield and your sword and all that, but you're not a Viking, because you haven't jumped off a nice ship with a lovely dragon head on it, like those over there. And I think that's one interesting thing. And the other thing I think that's important about the Vikings, to use that term, in Ireland, is this idea of it was the Vikings, the Irish, them, us, constant fighting. Whereas, I mean, some Norse jarl would have an alliance with an Irish king to beat the stuffing out of some other Irish king, and then the Irish king would go and help the Norse jarl to fight some Norse people. So there was an awful, like when Ivar the Boneless left to lead the Great Heathen Army. He had a chat with a couple of Irish chieftains, and he said, "Well, will you keep an eye on Difflin while I'm away clobbering the Saxons?"
Yeah.
You have all this kind of Brian Barud's what was his half brother or something, Mahan, had made an alliance with the North. So there's all these things that people don't sort of realize, because they have this, I suppose, stereotypical idea. Vikings were always jumping off ships. They were always burning things. And they completely forget that there was as much trade, settlement, exploration as there was raiding, and also the idea that every single Norse person was a Viking, went off raiding. I mean, a huge section of the Norse population across Scandinavia might never have even been in a ship, because unless you lived near the coast, you probably would never have been in a ship at all. And I think the term Viking is so misused, because we hear Viking ships, Viking clothing, Viking blah blah. Like there's no such thing as a Viking ship. There's a ship in which some people were going Viking. The ship is a ship. That's it. There was no Viking music or Viking art. There was Scandinavian, Danish, Swedish music, art, etc. So Viking is a word that is extremely incorrectly used, because it does specifically mean a person doing a particular thing. As I said, you drive a truck. Oh well, you're a truck. No, I just drive it. And I think that's something that is frequently over. And even, I mean, I've seen documentaries, I've seen things in museums where they refer to everybody as the Vikings. Here's a Viking woman plowing a field or something. No, she's not. She's not in the ship. And I mean, if you'd gone back to one of the Scandinavian countries, say in the 9th century, and there's a guy there with his plow, if you'd said to him, "Well, are you a Viking?" He'd have said, "Do you see a ship here?" No, yeah. So that's a little opening statement for me.
If you're going through the annals, it never says Viking. It never ever turns around and says
they never use that term.
This is their profession, because
yes,
at the time, at the start of Vikings moving into Ireland in around 793, they're attacking monasteries, they're burning monasteries, but that's not unusual. It pops up here and there, but what they really want to highlight at the start of the Viking Age is Flamard MacRivcon, God, his name's completely anyway. MacRivcon anyway, who's going around actually doing more damage than the Vikings were at the time. The Vikings were only attacking the main coastal areas. MacRivcon, on the other hand, in 836, just before 836, he was pushing to become King of Ireland, and he was doing far more damage, attacking any monastic settlement that disagreed with him. And he was quite literally rocking up, burning the monastic settlement, and his justification was they weren't holy enough. And in this day and age, that doesn't get enough highlight. It's very much like we get this image that it's Viking versus Irish, but if you actually look at the annals, sit down yourself, the annals are all online. I'd happily put the link below. I could look it up for you now. Just go on Google, type in
just
the
type
annals
in
of Ulster.
or Celt.ucc, and you'll get all the annals there basically.
All of it there, and you can. It's all translated, and you can read it bit by bit. I do it all the time, and the main thing is MacRivcon. Don't at the same time they are turning around and highlighting the Northmen heathens, as they call them, and they're panicking. It's like, oh, these non-Christian people are here, but they don't go into detail of why they're really panicking. Compared to MacRivcon, MacRivcon is taking some serious violent actions, but it depends which annals you're reading. If you do take it from the annals of Ulster, because they're very pro-Nail, they're going to be panicking and saying, look, this guy from Munster is coming up here, burning all of our monastic settlements because we disagree with him. And he's very much like, well, you're all heathens to me, and you deserve what you're getting. We don't talk about McCriffon enough. It's always, you even on Facebook, constantly hearing people saying the Viking invasion. And I'm thinking,
Yes.
what Viking invasion are you talking? Are you talking about the Kingdom of Luckland up in Scotland coming down in about, I think it's about 833, or it was about 820. They go into the Kingdom of Ullid, and the Kingdom of Ullid wipes them out of it. And if you're talking about that, it's not much of a Viking invasion. Don't get me wrong, it's something around 4,000 troops against 4,000 troops. It's a battle, but it's a very failed invasion. It should be called the Viking failed invasion if you're using that as an example, because there is, other than that, there is no large army that comes into Ireland. There are various raids around the coastal settlement. Where you do see large armies marching around is MacCriffon, who's going around each one of the monastic settlements, even in his own territories down in Cork, where I'm from, and he burns the monastic settlement there, the St. Finbarrs. He then kidnaps the Bishop of Cork, brings him up to Cashel and starves him to death, you know? Don't get me wrong, I'm not undermining what the Scandinavians do around the coast of there. It's violent and it's disturbing. They kidnap women, and they get monastic men, men of the church, they tie them to a stone and they stone them to death. Various violent acts like that. So they're not saints. They're just as violent as evil.
Yes, you're raising a very good point there, because when you look at like things, you look even say at Britain, there is this sort of popular thing that seems to be put forward that the Vikings turned up. Until the Vikings turned up, everything was lovely and peaceful. People went around sniffing flowers and all this kind of thing. But, I mean, Saxon England, or before the Vikings arrived, they were fighting constantly. The Welsh were raiding, the Scots were coming down on the Hadrian's Wall. All the various Saxon kingdoms were fighting each other. And, you know, the Vikings were just the last lot to turn up. And even the fact of invaders, I mean, once the Romans left, you had Angles, Saxons, Jutes, Frisians. They came in, they drove the actual Celtic people into Wales, into Cornwall. Then the Vikings turn up, but it's only the Vikings who are seen as these invaders. They were simply the last invaders to turn up. And I mean, Saxon Britain and Celtic Ireland, there was constant warfare going on. And as you say, in Ireland, the Irish chiefs were beating the crap out of each other long before the Vikings ever turned up. And that, yes, I mean, you raise a very good point there. And the Vikings fighting Vikings, you know, it's always over. I mean, there was a massive battle in Dundalk Bay in, I think, 850 something between Norwegians and Danes. You know, or you had the King of Difflin went down to Limerick and he burned all the ships of the King of Limerick because they were having a tiff. You know, you know, people overlook that kind of it. You know.
No, I mean, it goes down to not even just like clan warfare of, but you have political gangs within those clans. So you would have clans who maybe you mentioned there, where Olaf Guthruson went and attacked Limerick just before his failed invasion of Bramborough against King Athelstan in England. But yeah, they had, I mean, we've got the whole argument in Dublin, Difflin, obviously with the Fingal and the Donegal being basically potentially being two political factions at each other's throats. So these people were never on every sort of social level and every sort of, whether it be clan, kingdom, or anything like that. They're all broken down into sub factions and everything like that. It's never so black and white, and I think it's human nature to paint history black and white, you know, or simplify it, or tribalism, all that kind of stuff gets thrown into the mix. But it really is.
Yes, that's very true. You get this, you get these ideas, a lot of stereotypical ideas, and they become fact. And this is what you have repeated, even in very good documentaries. Well, I mean, look at the Round Tower. I mean, you know, any number of things you see will tell you the Round Towers were built because of Viking raids, so the monks go into them. Now, anybody with any brains, you know, if these people have come hundreds of miles to get treasure, and they know that you and that treasure are in that tower, they're going to get into it. It's not going to protect you at all. If you left the treasure outside and got in the tower, that would make sense. And it does appear that the towers really were belfries. They were not built specifically because of the Viking raids. some of them wouldn't even give you a view because they say, "Oh, there were men in the top," and they could, a lot of them you can't see anything. And even the door, 10 feet off the ground, some engineer was saying, well, the building is so tall and thin, it has very small foundations. But the reason the door was further up was if you put it at ground level, it would weaken the structure. And that's why they put it up there. And that makes sense because when you think of it, okay, the door's 10 feet in the air. Sven, bring a ladder the next time we come here, and then we'll climb up to the door. That wouldn't have stopped them. All they would do would be make them look around to find a way to get in. So, I mean, there's a bit of a fallacy, if you like, there, that these things were not custom made to protect the monks from the Vikings. They probably ran into them, but it's very unlikely they took all the treasure with them because that would have meant the Vikings followed them straight in.
Philip.
And you get that sort of thing. I think it's quite interesting.
Just to say on another chat here, me and you need to smile more. That's what
Who is that? That Wayne, was it?
No, it just came
I
to...
like to take these things very seriously.
Yes. We don't. I mean, we are here to have a serious debate, not do a song and dance thing, So we're all together in the floor, we'll dance.
That's in our 5 minutes. We did discuss about Denton putting on the pink dress that I sent him. The package hasn't arrived yet.
No, it hasn't arrived, darling, and I'm really upset because I would have been so good in pink dress, But I'm sorry about that. You'll just have to do without that wonderful experience. You would have remembered it forever.
As for me, I'm just so concerned that my computer might explode or something that I'm just constantly monitoring everything on.
Well, that would add a certain excitement to that. The way this started off, I wouldn't be at all surprised if it did blow up. I mean, let's face it, that's about the only thing that hasn't gone wrong yet, so,
YouTube's to blame for everything.
Hey, Philip, so going back, just a quick thing here from one of the guys watching here. Luke Mannion says, so basically Vikings were like old school Marines. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that the other day. I was actually thinking about making a video comparing the evolution of the Gallowglass to US Rangers and Vikings to US Marines, and you can actually see the evolution through the years going from the early medieval period and branching out to the skills and drills that they learned on the ground. Now, I'm not talking about like regiments going straight. I'm talking about like the survival skills and drills that the early Vikings would have used going on raids, and then the Gallowglass would have used when it comes down to the tough terrain that you experience in Ireland, because when you have people then from Britain and Ireland who immigrate over to America to fight in the American War of Independence, Rogers Rangers appear. Now, don't get me wrong, 90% of what Rogers Rangers use are what the indigenous Indian people already had. However, 10% of those skills actually originated with the Gallowglass and what they had learned in the rough terrain of Ireland and Scotland. It literally transferred over to Rogers Rangers, and there's some of the kit, for instance, the usage of blankets and cloaks that Rogers Rangers would have had as night cover at night time, which eventually become sleeping bags. That you can see the evolution of that going all the way back to Vikings. Now, US Marines, on the other hand, I'd say about 2% maybe of their skills, 2%, 3%, 4%, something like that, making that number up right now. Those skills, basic skills and drills of their survival techniques, the Vikings would have used as well, and people who came from Britain and Ireland who learned those skills during the early medieval period of going from a boat onto the coastal areas to quickly do an assault on a monastic settlement. Yeah, of course those skills would be brought over from the early medieval period, evolved through the years up into the modern warfare that we have today. So yeah, you're completely right. Like
another one from our good friend Wayne McAuliffe there is, have either of you watched the new Northman film? I haven't seen it.
I says they still haven't brought that in half an hour. My wife wanted to watch that. The first day it came out because of they all have historical clothing, and myself and Michael actually know some of the people that worked on that movie and provided clothing for that movie. So I wanted to watch it day one, and my wife wanted to watch it just out of the principle that they used all historical clothing in that movie. And sadly, it's not out in Japan yet.
And my wife wanted to watch it because Skarsgård's in it, and he looks like he takes his top off. So
Yeah, no, I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen it.
I've seen trailers
Not yet.
for it, and I've just seen a few bits of trailers, and I have to say, it looks a big improvement on Vikings. But then again, what isn't? It's certainly better than the Thor movies, but then, you know, let's face it, a Bugs Bunny cartoon, you know, would be better than the Thor movies. When I see those, you know, Bifrost has become a runway with flashing lights down it. No, yeah, it is. But it certainly looks, from the clothing point of view, and that it looked a great deal better than certainly Vikings. And I believe that guy Skarsgård is rather keen on having things accurate in his movies. Apparently, he's quite known for this, so he had some input into that. Well, so I'll certainly be interested to see if there's any genuine, you know, what the clothing is like. Because I mean, if you take, say, the Viking show, there is nothing that says Scandinavian in it. It is vaguely medieval. It could be France, it could be Italy at any time in the Middle Ages. For example, you don't see any of the women, say, wearing what would have been typical dress for a reasonably well-off woman, which is the long underdress, the shorter overdress, the two brooches, and that. Nobody had this. The men's clothing, I mean, a lot of the people in the Scandinavian countries will have brilliant red or blue tunics, fur-edged, this kind. Nobody had that. They're all going around in what looked more like the Sons of Anarchy, because they're all in sort of biker leather. So from the costume point of view, it would have to be better. Even The Last Kingdom, I think, was better than Vikings. It wasn't perfect, but it was a little bit. A little bit.
Wild. Have you seen the last season of The Last Kingdoms?
I'm about halfway through it. I don't
want to spoil it, so.
Yeah. I must say they got like say Winchester and that. They did a good job of recreating the towns with the dirty streets and all that. They did a very good job on that. But yeah, Vikings, I must say, the costumes really annoy me because they're so wrong. And you have this, even nobody has a helmet. Not that many Viking raiders would have actually worn helmets. Or everybody, I mean, all the Saxons that are going around in helmets. None of the Norse people are wearing helmets. You know, and the seer, the seer. I mean, for one thing, he's a man. He wouldn't have had the respect that he gets, because it was mainly women. But I mean, there's nothing anywhere that says the seer had to look like they just dug him up in the Valley of the Kings, because he looked like an animated Egyptian mummy. I found him just so irritating. But would you believe I actually worked with that guy, John Kavanagh?
Really?
I worked with him in the Abbey Theatre. Yeah, he was the young Covey in The Plough and the Stars. Yeah, so I wouldn't have recognized him with all that on his face, of course. But yeah, I actually worked with him. I found him so annoying, you know, because there's nothing that says the seer should look like an animated Egyptian mummy that's just got out of a glass case in the Cairo Museum. You know?
Another question here is, more Viking-wise, what is your opinion on Ragnar Lothbrok? Was he a Viking equivalent of King Arthur, or was he a real man who truly was just a badass and bred some fearless sons? Well, we've touched this subject before. We've touched this before, Philip and I.
Yeah.
I think from what we can say, that it's much more likely he was an invented character or based on someone. Now, we know the sons are real. I mean, we know that Ivar the Boneless, Bjorn Ironside, Halfdan, and Uber were historical characters. But I'm inclined to think that their surname probably was Ragnarsson. Their father probably was a Ragnar, not the Ragnar. And they probably cashed in on a legend of their own time, because he was probably already a sort of folk hero. I would be inclined to think that he is a made-up character based on maybe like King Arthur is probably based on some Romano-British auxiliary legionary commander or something who was left over after the Romans went. So that would be
Yeah.
my take on Ragnar, because it doesn't seem any real historical evidence that he existed.
It's getting very. There's the debate that myself and Michael have been reading up on. What's that book called again that we recently got between ourselves? The Viking Market of Britain and Ireland, is it?
Yeah, something like that. I was actually reading it today, and I can't remember the title.
Yeah,
It's been so long since I actually read the
Well,
title.
I need to go over that for the video that's coming up for this weekend, which is the trade relationship Ireland and Kiev has as part of the Silk Road. It just so happens that Kiev is massively a part of the algorithm right now because of the Ukrainian war. This video has nothing to do with the Ukrainian war. It's literally concentrated on the Silk Road and how Dublin was able to go over, bring their trade from Denmark then over to Kiev and stuff. And so with that, there's something that's very interesting. That book that myself and Michael are going through right now, if Michael's able to find it, post a link to it on Amazon. We'll try to go with that for anyone who's watching wants to pick up the book. But anyway, regardless, right now it's trying to go back over what happened with the arrival of Ivor the Boneless, and it ends up putting more questions in your head than it does answer. And if you've read Claire Downham's previous book, and then the book that came the following year from another author, Claire Downham's book being The Viking Kings of Britain and Ireland, and then the follow-up book is Norse Gaelic Context in the Viking World, it would have you believe that Ivor the Boneless and Olaf the White and that whole tree line of families originate from Norway. But this book takes a step back and says, but when Ivor the Boneless comes in, it's then at that point that you see Danish mercenaries pop in with the literature, which is very true. You're going through the annals, and then it's like Danish mercenary, Danish mercenary, Danish mercenary. You even see Danish mercenaries popping up in Cork with the Gall Gael, the Irish Viking, Otter the Black, who comes in with Danish Vikings to take back Cork away from the Oenachta, the Cashel. Cashel recently went over. They took over and occupied Cork and kicked out Otter the Black. So Otter the Black goes over to Britain for a few years. He then takes on Danish mercenaries. My main point is that's the point where Danish mercenaries suddenly appear. So you can turn around and say, oh, it looks like Ivor the Boneless is related to Olaf the White and the whole Norwegian tree line. But why is it that once Ivor the Boneless pops up in 850, around 850, someone else will probably correct me on that date now, but it's at that point that Danish mercenaries come in with literature. At the same time, that's when we start to find Danish finds in both Britain and the whole Hiberno-Scandinavian trade link. That's where Danish finds start to pop up, and that's why we call it Hiberno-Scandinavian now. We don't call it Norse Gael anymore, because Norse Gael just implied the relationship between Norway and Ireland. What we do find is when Ivor the Boneless comes in, it's then we're finding Scandinavian finds from all over the Scandinavian world, not just Norway and Denmark, but also from Sweden and Poland and various other areas that are now occupied by the Vikings as they advance all the way down to the Eastern Roman Empire with Kiev. And so when reading through this, and Michael will agree with me, it's really exciting right now because we're going over the literature and we're really questioning what's going on. And at the same time, we're digging into the ground and we're finding more and more stuff. Sometimes we hit real gold because there's two annals that are missing right now. The two annals that are missing is Brian Boru's saga and also the Dublin saga. So imagine we're digging through the earth and we find these two books that give us a solid answer. Very, very super slim that we do find it, but you can imagine getting into archaeology.
We might find it if the Dale Earnin stopped building car parks over Viking burial grounds or anything like that. So, but
that could happen. I mean, look how they found Richard III.
Yeah.
In the car park.
But
so something like that could happen.
Here, this book does touch on the theory that Ivor the Boneless was Norwegian, or the author believes Norwegian, but from a really heavily influenced Danish area. So it was within the sphere of Danish influence and trade. If anything, it would have more ties towards Denmark than the rest of Norway. So because obviously you have to imagine how Norway is at the time. It's very it's mountainous right through the spine of it. You know, you've got the coast and then the mountainous regions and then the rest of Norway. So a lot of places are very disconnected. When you look at maps today and you think, oh, it's just like a 10-minute drive to here and it's just over this hill. Back in them days, that could be a couple of miles down the road, could be treacherous. You know, wildlife, bad weather.
Yes.
Split your.
That's true. It's somewhere like Norway, even if there was, even if it was only a couple of miles over a mountain or that, without roads and that, you might even have been better off to get in your ship and travel around and go around the other side.
This is actually where the whole theory with why Viking ships became so prevalent in their society and why it became so important is because and why they were so the same way in Ireland, where the rivers were the highways. You look at the Hebrides and the islands were all trade routes, all through the silver trade routes there. This author calls them silver nodes, and they were all about markets and stuff. But I digress. Basically, these boats were the way to get around, safer, quicker. You know, just all round. Far better way of travelling than going on foot or horseback around some of those parts of the country.
Yeah, and of course with their draft requirement of only 3 feet, you could get a huge distance inland in a very shallow river. I mean, when you think the river only had to be, you know, here, and up you would go. And I'm sure there must have been many coastal towns in places like Ireland and France and that would think, gosh, we're fine here. I mean, you're not going to get a warship up that little bit of a river. But of course, the Norse ships could do that. And the same with the trade between the Baltic and Constantinople. They were able to navigate often tiny little rivers to get to this river and port the ship over into that one, which would not have been possible if they had had a ship requiring a big draft. You know, it was a brilliant design. And when you think of it, like Norse ships, they didn't actually go through the water; they more or less were on it. Rather, even when you see some of the reproduction ships now, unlike the average ship where it's down in the water, you see these vessels are literally just going along on top of the waves. So a brilliant design.
Yeah, I've seen endless amount of Irish historians get quite literally very bogged down by the way people travel in Ireland. They're very much like, people look at Ireland at a very 2D dimension, as in this is a road, so they must have travelled from A to B, but that road is very damaged. So that it's just proof that these people were very backwards. Trade was very difficult to get from A to B. In fact, if they just took a step back, because what they're looking from is more later medieval sources, in particular where I'm from in Mallow, with the Desmond Fitzgeralds. The Desmond Fitzgeralds are given money to build a bridge and to repair all the roads. And he writes letters to the king saying, oh yeah, the road is damaged again, and he never uses any of this money, pockets all the money. But technically, if you go back to the early medieval period, where I'm from in Mallow, you can actually see the Black River going from Kildare, it's Kildare, up around to where another junction is, and then up into Mallow. And from the Viking period, well, even I'd even go back all the way to the Golden Age of Ireland, probably even further back still. You could see trade coming in from France, coming in from Bristol, coming in from various areas from the early medieval period, going up Kildare, right, cooking up and around, and then going off into Mallow. And it's way faster. Like the main way people were getting around in Ireland was to jump onto a river and then just take a boat around. And then, of course, when the Viking ships come in and the Irish adapt to the new Viking ships, trade goes far quicker. And so Desmond Fitzgerald, when we go into the later medieval period, he's writing letters to the King of England going, oh, the roads are so damaged. Wouldn't it be great if we had roads just like in England? And so he gets all this money, and instead of investing it into roads and bridges, he's already making. Why would he do that? That would slow it down, because using the river from Kildare up to Mallow is far quicker. You literally get onto the boat, zip up, and that's you. Why would you put it on a horse and carriage and then send it up the road. It's way too slow and way
Yes,
too
yes,
dangerous. because
that's very good. I mean,
push it.
if you got a cart and a horse, and you got one of these little river barges, even today, and you have a race, well, the river barge is going to get there damn sight quicker than your horse and cart is.
100%.
Yeah. And you know there's another thing I think is a very important aspect of the Norse, well, the Viking raids, we'll call them that, is this idea that everybody has that the Vikings hated Christianity, because we see they must have hated Christianity because they were always attacking monasteries and nunneries and churches. Yeah, because I mean, you know, a burglar today, he looks to the house and there's a Maserati out the front, there's a swimming pool in the back, and they have a helicopter as well. Oh, I'm going to break into that. He looks at the house, the windows are broken, the curtains are dirty, and there's a bike chained to the railings. I'm not going to break into that. There's nothing there. And I mean, the vast majority of the money of that time was in the hands of the church. You know, your bishops and archbishops usually were wealthier than the kings that they served. So the Vikings went to churches and monasteries and that because that's where the money was. They weren't going there because they hated Christianity, because like a lot of pagans, the Vikings didn't care what you worshipped. Once you didn't try to make them worship your gods, you could worship a turned upon a stick for all they cared. So this idea that these raids were because they were Christian, no. I was maybe an analogy, like, you know, if the Jews and the Muslims had all the money in those days, the Viking raiders would have walked past the Christian church, they'd have raided the mosque and the synagogue, because that's what they were going to do. You know, they were like modern burglars.
Our last video on the African Irish Vikings, it clearly shows that we had the likes of Ironside and, did I just butcher that? God, what's his name again? Ragnar's son who goes into the Mediterranean.
Bjorn Ironside.
Bjorn Ironside, that's the one. Bjorn Ironside going into the Mediterranean and raiding into Italy and various places around there. And he brings back all that wealth. So we know that they were going into that whole Mediterranean area where we had people practicing Islam, various Jews and stuff, and the Vikings were literally picking where the majority of wealth was and hitting that.
Yes.
And it's from that point onwards that we can see them hitting Liberia, hitting around North Africa and stuff. And it's also interesting that starts to increase more and more as we go into 950, that there's more and more Viking raids around Liberia, which is today Spain and Portugal. So they were attacking the plate areas that had the most wealth and slaves that they could bring back to Dublin.
Yes.
You know?
I've got a...
It made sense. It made sense. You know, I mean, like, why would you raid the corner sweet shop to get the till when there's a bank next door? You know, I mean, this is their motivation. They went where the money was, and you know, because when you think of it, their acceptance of Christianity. Look in Ireland, the way almost immediately the North settlers began to intermarry with the Irish. They were converting to. By the time of the Battle of Clontarf, I mean, we are always told Brian Boru wanted to drive the pagans from Ireland. He'd have had a job to find one in Difflin in 1015, because most of them were Christian. The King of Difflin was Christian. I mean, he founded Christchurch Cathedral. Brian just wanted the Kingdom of Difflin for himself. But the Norse were so quick to accept other people's religions and not to persecute them. I mean, the Danish and the Norwegian that settled us in Ireland didn't start going around killing all the Christians. They were living quite happily with the Christians quite often. I mean, look at the monastery in Cork, whereas the Scandinavian settlement and the monastery were side by side, and the monks were trading. You know, so they did not have, oh, you're a Christian, I'm going to kill you kind of thing. They weren't like even some of the caliphates from that later, who, well, you either convert to us or you're dead. They didn't have that, because of course when you think of it, pagans never had missionaries. They never tried to convert people. They didn't care. So the idea that they hated Christianity is, they might have hated individual Christians, especially if Christians had done something to them, like the St. Brice's Day massacre kind of thing. Though most of the Danes and that were massacred in that were probably already Christians anyway.
Yeah, they were.
But you know, that's another one of the fallacies, I think. Well, it ranks to the horned helmet. You know, it's a popular idea, but it didn't happen.
Well, we've got another one here. I'm going to start. Okay. I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to start my sort of 2 pence on it, and then I'll let you fight it out after that.
No,
Yes.
carry on.
So it says, so who do you think would win the Great Heathen Army, or a few legions of an equivalent size? So I'm going to chip in here and say that I'm guessing when you say legion, you mean when everyone sort of envisions the region with the Lorica segmentata, the layered sort of sheet metal that you see. I'm guessing that's what you mean. Now, actually, this has been sort of talked about on previous blogs and stuff like that. And I think there's a number of things that you have to think about whenever you're thinking about this. Is that one, we're not entirely 100% sure on the tactics and the style of fighting that the Vikings used. Not as the way we are with the Romans, because they wrote a lot down and we've got a lot of formations and stuff like that. So you're comparing one with a lot of information with a lot less information. Another thing is, although cool that armor looks, it wasn't as strong as you would think. Later medieval armor compared to that just wipes the floor with it, and that's even as far as what we class as the Dark Ages. That's a misnomer. It wasn't really. There was where it went down in other areas, it went up in others. Creation of weapons were stronger, armor was stronger in a lot of places as well. So you've got these slightly stronger weapons against slightly weaker armor. Stuff like that is going to play a huge part. So it's kind of, I would say that the Romans would win, in my personal opinion. And that's purely based on the fact that it's purely based on the fact that there's a famous line, whether it's real or not, I don't know, where Leonidas turns around to his Athens ally, and he goes, "What does your man do?" And he goes, "I'm a carpenter." And he goes, "What does your man do?" And he basically turns around in the filth here and goes, "See, my old friend, I brought more soldiers than you did." And that's the difference. Roman army was soldiers. Vikings weren't all soldiers. They could be like Denton's already touched on the subject. Yeah, anybody, and they're not all trained the same standard. So I'm going to say the professional always beats the regular.
I would be inclined to agree with you. I mean, when you look at the Boadicea rebellion, when Suetonius Paulinus finally confronted her, she outnumbered him many times over. But his men were disciplined. They held a line. Hers all rushed in a rabble. They jammed up against the Roman shield wall. They had long swords. They couldn't swing them because they were, whereas the Romans just kept stabbing away. Yeah. And a much smaller Roman force won because of their discipline, their organization, and the fact that the other lot weren't soldiers. They were just a rabble. So, yes, a very disciplined small force usually will overcome a larger force. And, well, as you say, most of the Viking raiders, few of them were actual soldiers, if you like. The housecarls and that of the kings and jarls, yeah, they were professionals. And a small group of raiders who did nothing but raid. Yes, but probably 80% at least of your raiders were farmers, fishermen, carpenters. Okay, the weather's nice, we'll go on a raid. Then I'll come back and finish building that house. These were not going to have the fighting ability of, well, say the Norse people who became the Varangian Guard. They would have been a very different matter, because these were highly trained soldiers. I mean, the Varangian Guard would probably have slaughtered the average Viking raiding party, because they were far, far superior in equipment. And don't forget, most of the Viking raiders will not have worn armor. Few of them would have had chainmail or helmets. They were expensive. So your average Viking raider was going to be in a jerkin, a tunic. The only way he's going to get a helmet or chainmail is if he takes one off somebody who's dead. So even only a small number of them would have had anything like this or chainmail. So they would have been at a great disadvantage against heavily armored. Even say the slightly later, say, heavy cavalry of the Normans in their armor and that would have probably plowed out a shield wall, because they would have just been too strong for it. So I would say your assessment is pretty good. Sometimes, of course, a professional body. I mean, Isla Malana in the Zulu War, where the Zulus swept over the British because they had not deployed very well. You can sometimes have a rabble that beats the professional army, but usually only when the professional army makes a mistake. As in that case, Colonel Pauline had put his men out into redoubts instead of proper firing lines. Later, at the Battle of Ulundi, where the British troops were all in rows, firing lines, kneeling, standing, the Zulus got nowhere because the superior British forces were properly deployed. At Isla Molana, they weren't. So I think your argument holds up in military terms, certainly. That's my 2 cents worth.
My 20 cents on that is that it depends on which view you're going from. If most likely you are thinking about a big open field and you're thinking about the default Viking, who basically is a normal, regular free man who comes from a basic small little village. He's got a axe, and he's got a not even a professional axe, an axe that's made for one button. And then he's
any old
shield, and he doesn't even have time to train in martial arts 24/7 compared to his other counterparts in both Ireland, Scotland, and Scandinavia. And furthermore, he's then going up against a fully disciplined Roman soldier. Even if it's not even in my field of expertise, which Roman history isn't, it's quite obvious that straight away this poor Viking is going to get ploughed down. However, as Denton has pointed out, if you're talking about Viking from a wider scale, and you're thinking about Roman history from a wider scale, we do actually have examples of people of the Scandinavian world fighting Romans in the late antiquity period in Eastern Roman Empire. We do actually have the likes of the Rus of Novgorod and of Kiev going down and actually hammering the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, and even going into Constantinople and sacking Constantinople.
Yes, that's a good example. But of course, the only thing to remember there is the Romans they were dealing with, especially the East. I mean, these were not the Romans that would have been following Julius Caesar or Pompey. They were a very different lot. The great disaster in the Teutoburg Forest. The Roman legions would probably have slaughtered the Germanic tribe in a field. But when they marched through a forest and they attacked them both, they couldn't deploy.
Not just not just that. They were you remember they were led by a Roman as well. They weren't. They were They were taught all the plans that the Romans would deploy, because they had deployments for being flanked. They had deployments for being
all these. They were limited to a place where they couldn't.
So this is the thing. I think Luke sort of established the boundaries of the argument. If you go into varying different parts of his argument, like Varangian guards and different time periods in the Roman era, because we know it waxed and waned in its wealth when it skimped on the armor and stuff like that. So it's very hard to you're comparing 1,000 years of Roman history basically, and so 500 years of Viking history. At two different ends of history. So with in your argument of Julius Caesar's, Octavian's legions against sort of at the time of the Great Heathen Army, I would say the Romans would sort of have no problem.
There is one thing though, where the like of Viking raiders or the Gauls or any of those would have more of an advantage, would be fighting in a town, where the opponents, be they Romans or Macedonian phalanx or whoever, could not deploy in their formation, and it would have been individual, me against you. That would have come down to individual ability more. So like a fight in a town or in a village or even in the forest would be a very different thing from wide open countryside and everybody all lined up in proper formation, because most of the professional armies those days, the Romans, the Greeks, they liked to have a lovely big open space. Everybody, there's your unit there and your unit there and the cavalry's here. They did not like fighting in a town where you could walk around the corner and meet the enemy. So in a context like that, the Norse raiders might have had an advantage. They would have been better able to deal with an enemy that was broken up and disorganized rather than in proper formation. I think in there they could have had an advantage.
Another question we got here is what do you think about Berserkers and Ulfhednar? Were they in Ireland?
Wayne, I got you sorted. I literally seen that. I was actually preparing that. Yeah. The Fenian and the Finn. And it's the Fenian cycle. The Fenian cycle, the Irish and Scots Gaelic literature. Actually, I'll send you the link there, Wayne. I'll type it out when I'm walking away to you. But yeah, we actually have sources where we have Irish Finn warbands that go in the Fenian. They live in the countryside. They're taught at a very young age to the basic skills and drills of what it is to be a warrior. They go out into the countryside. They live there from the age of 14. Once they have finished their fosterage, the fosterage being when, as part of an alliance between two clans, they would give their son over to another clan, and that other clan then would educate their son from the age of 7 to 14. Once they had completed their basic training, from a Fenian point of view, they would have gone into a war band, right? From there, they would have gone into the boundaries of a Tuat, which is like for Munster. It would have been up around, it would have been between the boundaries of Leinster, Meath, and Connacht, so up around that whole area. And they would have gone around that whole boundary area, and they would have bumped into another war bands, and they would have had skirmishes. And this is all about part of the banter anyway. If you actually read this book, The Finn Cycle, the Irish and the Scots of Gaelic Literature, it makes it out that it was all a good laugh, although sometimes it escalates to a point where a young fella gets killed, and then they take his head, they put his head into a bag, and then they go into the forestry, and they actually live in the forestry for most of the winter and the summer. Sometimes they go into specific settlements that are made for them, where there is brothels, where women give them company, and the women end up making a fortune. There's, if you read through it, there's women that go off and open up their own brothels that are catered just for these specific boys going into men, because this is between the age of 14 to 25, and then they were looked after by basically, I don't know if Facebook's going to cut this bit out, but bastard children, the unwanted children of nobles would raise up these Fenians, and they were the head of these Fenian war bands. And in this, one of the skills and drills that they're taught is how to put animal skin on and basically camouflage themselves, put dirt on their face and stuff. Just like we see with the berserkers and stuff in their literature, where they put animal skin on and they can camouflage themselves. And then they take drugs and so on and so forth to escalate themselves to go into battle. And we can see that in the Táin, Cú Chulainn. And I know it's in the mythology part, but there's so much in the Táin that, because the Táin itself was written for these young fellas as part of a story. And myself and Michael, who've done military service, we like our stories to have realism in it. And if you go through the Táin, there is endless amount of stuff in the Táin. We know the Táin was written during the Viking Age, because the skills and drills that are seen in the Táin, we can see various war bands in Ireland use them. So what we can gather in that is that there's a moment where in that Cú Chulainn goes into a rage, and he can't be calmed down. It's not until he's put into a bath full of naked women, and they're putting cold water into him, that he comes out of this berserk state. So yeah, it is very likely that we did have berserkers in Ireland. Even to step it up a wee bit, if we go back into ancient literature, we can see, what was it, Gaul? Is it Gaul? France? Gaul?
Gaul,
Yeah.
We can see various clans coming from Gaul, if that's the correct word, because ancient history now is out of my field. But we can see groups coming out of Gaul to go and sack Rome in around, I think it's 390. I'm sure it's 390 they come down to sack Rome.
Oh, they do several times. Towards the end, they do several times, to be fair, right through its history.
Yeah.
It was always their biggest fear, that was what they did to galvanize their...
And in that, we can see men who actually just remove their clothing, go completely naked, and just have a shield and sword, and then go into the line, the peasants, I can't remember what they're called in Rome, but they go into that line, they freak out, and they run off the field. And it makes sense. If you're using shield wall and shield wall tactics, you need a way to break part of that shield wall. So it makes sense that some fellas would literally run at the shield to try to dislodge it, so that way they can open a gap for other lads to go away
Yes.
and open up the entire
Yes.
line.
Well,
So
yes.
for me, berserkers make perfect sense from a tactical point of view.
It makes
Get
perfect
one lad,
sense
yeah,
because I mean they did have
come
they did have a wedge formation,
they
which
did
would
yeah,
drive
or-
at the shield
formation.
wall and try to crash through. And we know drugs were used because I mean we found that there's a grave of a vulva, and she had a container and it was full of henbane seeds, which is a powerful hallucinogen. So like we know that drugs were taken, and I mean the use of getting someone so worked up, so excited, or so in pain already that they feel nothing. I mean, that's been used. As a matter of fact, the famous 1911 45 caliber Colt pistol, the American one, was actually developed because of that, because the Americans were fighting the the Moro tribesmen over in the Philippines.
Yeah.
And the Moro had a very interesting thing that the men would basically bind their kind of bits down below, the sort of spherical ones. They would bind these till they were in agony. They were in so much pain that if you shot them somewhere that wasn't vital, they didn't even feel it. They just kept going. If you didn't hit them in the heart or the brain, they came at you. So the Americans needed a bigger gun. But these would have been very like the berserkers. Now, they'd gone wild for a different reason because they were in pain, but the result would be the same. They would just keep coming. So, yes, it does seem very logical that the berserkers existed. And if it was a thing that was done by the Scandinavians generally, I would assume it would have been done in Ireland, in Britain, in anywhere they were. You know, I can't see them just doing it in Scandinavia. You know, one would assume they would have been doing it here.
We're at the hour
For
mark.
me, sorry.
We're at the hour mark. 1 hour.
Oh,
Aha.
okay.
Do we get a prize or something for that? No.
We just.
I could go on for another 15 minutes. But,
Well, this could be.
Yeah.
This can always be a part 2. We can always make a part 2. See what people think.
God, I
you
can
That's true,
Get
part
more,
2.
whiskey and I can chat away for all night.
know.
Well, that's true. I mean, a
Something
discussion like
funny
this,
as well.
a discussion like this could still be going on at 6 o'clock in the morning, kind of thing, you know. And yes, part 2. That sounds good. But,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I think we've covered a good few things.
Yeah,
already,
there's been a
you know.
good few things. Thanks very much for the questions here, and the views. You know, only towards the end there did it start to. It never dropped below 4 or 5. So, and we went all the way up to 9 views, which is I think great to keep. We managed to keep people entertained for that long.
Well, I think we did well, and don't forget when the original advert was for a different. Was for YouTube,
Yes.
not
Yeah.
Facebook. So
Well-
the fact that we got that many on, you know, I think it is
Yeah.
quite good. Because a lot of
So-
people might have just gone to look at YouTube or don't see it and
Yeah.
didn't bother. You know?
So we will. We now realise what was wrong with our YouTube. You have to apply for a live thing first time 24 hours in advance. So when we applied for it to go live, we thought we'd just go straight away live because we've met all the other criteria. But actually, they need a full day to do whatever they need to do.
Yeah.
So we've already done that. So next time, this will be recorded and live on one of the channels, one of the 3
Yeah.
channels. We'll also get past. You know, I think I know how to work this recording system now after trial and error. But yeah, thanks very much for joining us, Wayne, Luke. You know, thanks so much for the comments in there, and you know, all of yous was a good hour of information, a lot of information to digest. So,
Yes, I thought so. It went well. There were a lot of interesting topics, and some sensible questions. You know, because you can sometimes get questions, and you say, "How dumb are you? You even asked that." You know, and nobody did that. So that's good.
well,
That's good because there are a
well,
lot of ding-dongs out there.
if everyone wants to say.
I had something. Go on,
What?
stop, Mike.
I was gonna say, should we just say goodbye to everyone and then we'll continue chatting?
Oh yeah,
here?
continue the chat.
Right, take care now,
Yeah.
guys. Take care now. Bye bye.
Absolutely,
All right, so lads,
absolutely.
all the
Goodbye,
best. Oh,
goodbye.
and subscribe to Irish Medieval.
Yes, yes.
Ah, yes.
Oh, and
absolutely,
Denton's
yes.
histories as well. I'll put links up below.
And Dungeons Tales as well. No, you were nearly leaving me out there.
No, I said it wrong. I said it wrong. Right, goodbye. Goodbye.